partner, Carlos R. Gomez of Coconut Justice.
Woo. That's me.
So we're trying something a little bit new, a little bit of an experiment, and we hope that folks will tag along and see where this goes. We have an idea that...
Actually, let's go way back. Jack and I have been friends for a long, long time, and we have always wanted to work on something together.
Yeah, and we've tried.
We've gotten close, and then it's gotten far, and then we've gotten close, and then it's gotten far. So now we have the internet world to kind of keep tabs on us and keep us on the straight and narrow.
Yeah. So let's make sure this isn't the last video. No, I don't think so. I'm really excited about this. I think folks out there will be too, because I know when I was in school and even when I was a kid, I wished that there was something like this concept. So to kind of quickly explain it, the idea is that we're going to, in a season of episodes, whatever that turns out to be, we're going to, from beginning to end, create an entire project that we pre-chose and just document the entire process, everything from brainstorming, from designs to actual producing the product, if there is a product involved, all the contacts involved for those of our contacts that wish to, be aired, whether that's like a printing service or a 3D printing service or an agent or whoever it may be that we're in contact with. We want to go from the ground up and basically create a user manual for the creative process.
And the cool thing is going to be, not only are we going to have these main check-in meetings, but we're also going to be working independently and loading up videos from each of our creative process. So then that way you guys will be able to see what Jack is doing, what software he uses, maybe what hardware he uses, and compare that to what I'm doing and all of my hardware and software things. And we're going to try to give you guys as rich of an experience as possible.
Yeah, so there'll be like everything from brainstorming sessions and even kind of how to work through disagreements and arguments, or even like different art styles, like how to merge them and make them feel part of a cohesive project. So there'll be these main check-in videos, and you can kind of consider them like meetings at work. This is where we get together and we discuss where we're at. We can bounce ideas off each other and review the work that we've done. And then in between, we're each going to go off, do our homework. We'll record those videos. We'll put up our process of paintings and drawings or writing, or even just little rants or thoughts that we have. Those will be available kind of as a live feed chronologically. You can keep up with those along with us, which both Carlos and I will use those to keep up on each other, and then we'll reconvene at one of these types of events and go through all that stuff. So I think it's going to be kind of an exciting way to truly fully document a project from beginning to end.
Now, some of you guys might recognize us from the Sketch Zone podcast. And even though we are part of the Sketch Zone podcast, this is a separate project. And this is just something, again, we're going back to Jack and I have always wanted to produce something together. And then we wanted to keep continuing to build on those things that we've created. So Sketch Zone is Sketch Zone. It's going to remain Sketch Zone. But we're also going to be having a blog. We're going to be completely cheap on this. So
because it's free to everyone who wants to follow along and make a project. So
and no charge. We're gonna not only are you going to be able to see all of these videos on YouTube, but we're going to go ahead and post things on the processprojects.sketch.zone. And that way, while you guys are following along, if you have any comments, questions, any pointers, if you guys want to give some good feedback, you guys will be able to interact with us on that. And so we're going to go ahead and put the link on the show notes. I think that's it.
Yeah. So maybe we should unveil what the project is we're going to do for quote unquote season 1.
I feel like we're about to announce a winner.
Kind of. The
And the
winner. We're the
winner,
winners. We
and
are
the
the
winner for,
winners.
yeah. uh, do you want to announce what we're going to do? So Jack and I had a conversation and we narrowed it down. We're eventually what we're going to have is not just this project that Jack is about to announce, but we're talking about multiple projects. We want to continue to create things. So we're going to be taking a look at animations. We're going to take a look at books. We're going to take a look different kinds of books, maybe comic strips and things like that. So So with that said, Jack, what is the project that we decided to jump in on?
An illustrated book from beginning to end. So kind of the history behind that is I have always just had an interest in children's books, illustrated books. I've done a couple, only one is kind of available and in circulation, quote unquote. I know Carlos has had quite an interest, and he has some thoughts of his own, and I've been wanting to do more. So we thought this was kind of like a perfect place, a perfect test ground to test not only the creative process, but this entire experiment that is the process projects.
So to kick off the very first illustrated book, Jack and I didn't really want to come in and brainstorm on the topic. We wanted to come in with a topic, but then we wanted this first episode to show how we build on just the initial, like the seed of the idea. Yeah. So now we're going to apply a little fertilizer and a little bit of water, and we're going to see what it turns out to be.
You want to go ahead and reveal our premise, our elevator pitch, and then honestly, telling the truth, we have not discussed anything further than just kind of this premise, because we want to record every single thing about the brainstorming session and how it unfolds as a story and its characters and where it goes.
And we wanted to show you just how my silly ideas drive Jack crazy. So the premise of the book is going to be we have a little robot who doesn't quite fit in. And the reason he doesn't fit in is because he's adopted. And his buddy, eventually what his buddy, who his buddy is a little monster. And the reason, let me say it like this. The monster doesn't fit into his world either because he's a monster and everyone is afraid of the monster. So you have someone who feels different in the robot, doesn't quite fit in because he's probably not exactly like his parents. And yes, we know that robots don't have parents. Well, actually, they probably do. It would be a factory or something.
Well, that's what we're going to explore.
Yeah, that's true. So a robot who is adopted, doesn't quite fit in, is going to meet up with a
comes from space, probably
doesn't quite fit in because
meets with the monster. Right.
There we go.
All right. So let's start with the basics. Materials you may need for your brainstorming session. I vote for a notebook and or sketchbook and a pencil, but there are various other things. I don't know what Carlos does. I mean, I do plenty of digital work, but in brainstorming and writing stuff down, good old pencil and paper is my choice.
That's it for me too. I don't, it's one of those situations where you need to step away from technology to really get your imagination going. Some folks might go ahead and open up one of their art programs and start drawing and sketching and stuff like that. But for me, when it comes to trying to come up with a story, I step away from things and I try to think of, it depending on what the story is going to be. I try to think of silly things and then stitch them all together. How about you?
Yeah, and there's something kind of nice about the physical contact, you know, between your brain and your hand and the pencil and the paper. I truly believe, I don't think it's like spiritual new age stuff. I think there is actually like physical, chemical, motor chemistry thing happening. And it's just kind of for really loose brainstorming stuff. I just feel like a pencil and paper is the best. That's not to say that cool ideas or like spawn stuff can't happen while you're working in, you know, Modo or, you know, Photoshop, and you're like, wow, this could be like a whole story. That happens all the time. But I think once I have that concept, that elevator pitch, or that I need to go do this and develop it further, I feel like every developing phase kind of starts on pencil and paper.
And one of the funny things is, for me, when I open up Photoshop, for example, let's just say you have a new document and it's, you know, 1280 by 760 or whatever it is. It gives me the sense of confinement.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know, even if I were to try to take notes in Photoshop or Sketchbook Pro or whatever, I feel confined. Whereas with a notebook, you know, I'm only confined with however many pages I have left. And even then, I have the back sides of them too. So even when I'm writing a script, like if I'm writing a script for Robots and Aliens, I go to paper every time.
Yeah.
And then I brainstorm, and it's a complete sloppy mess. And then after I take all my notes, then I go and I type them up and I try to create the script that way.
Cool. So we have a monster and a robot that are misfits, and they meet up and they pair. So the general format, especially if you should talk about this because some of this kind of constrains story, we're doing a printed book, illustrated, kind of not necessarily children's. We'll see where this goes. Maybe the story will end up more adult, but I think we want to do a printed book, if I'm not mistaken. And do we want to do kind of like standard? So there's a standard in children's books that they do 32 pages and it's divisible by 4 because that's just the way, you know, you have a front and back on the either side of the binding. Mm-hmm. So you do these multiples of 4, and then they do 30, and that's an old archaic thing from the old printing press days because that's what fit on an entire sheet, and they could print the entire book on a sheet and cut it. Obviously, there's companies now, and there's also, you can print them digital, you can do them yourself. There's all sorts of staples even that don't confine you to that limit. But I guess we should decide about how long we want this to be.
For me, I think
pretty good, huh? Standard. Let's stick with the old standard.
Yeah, that's fine. And then if we need to adjust it, go more or less, then we can go. But that's a really good starting point. 32 pages.
And then, you know, two or three of those are title pages and credits. So we're really looking at 28, 29 pages of content. So that kind of gives us the way I like to work. I don't know about you, but in this case, since I know exactly how many pages I have, we can actually kind of create like a bullet point. So once we get to the kind of story aspect, we can say this happens on page 1, this happens on page 2, and you kind of already have, you know, like when you were in math class or science class, you had to do outlines, you know, with like the Roman numeral and stuff. Like it's a super easy way to see how it's going to fit and flow in the book. But obviously we don't have a story yet, so we should get there first. So talk to me about this this adopted robot. What are you thinking about adopted? Because I have to admit that was one of the things when we were brainstorming elevator pitches. I was like, adopted robot. There's something really hilarious about that because robots don't have parents, and I don't know how we work that into a story, but it's hilarious.
I know you. When I said an adopted robot, you're like, robots have parents? I was like, you don't know. You've never been to space. Get the hell out of here.
You're not a robot.
You're not a robot. So, yeah.
So what's the deal? So maybe that's why, and we can obviously, there's no spoilers here because you're seeing the full process. You're going to see the ending before we even do the ending. There's none of that. So we're going to be talking a lot about how it could end and how the themes work and all the inner workings. So when I first think of like adopted robot, it immediately makes me think like, well, we could do it one of two ways. Either at the end he finds out that he was mistaken, right? So he was being the rebel without the cause. He was mistaken. He actually doesn't have parents because no other robots have parents. Like, yeah, it's a bummer that he doesn't have parents to look up to, but on the flip side, he's just like all the other robots. So it's like one of those kind of bittersweet things.
If he doesn't have parents, then maybe that brings some validity to his relationship with the monster.
Right. Or or he does have parents, and now we have to explain how that works. The birds and the bees are robots.
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
this is a new concept.
Yeah,
maybe robots are advanced enough now that now they're creating baby robots.
It might be one of those things. You know how is it Amazon? Amazon has one of those little plug-in things, and you say, "Hey,
oh yeah,
little robot thing, you know, what's the weather going to be like?" And she's just constantly stalking you. So it might be one of those situations where his parents, he finds out that he was made, and his quote unquote parents have actually included him into their lives, their family, and maybe it's cool that he never knew that robots never had parents. That means that his parents were actually so cool as to make him think that, you know what I mean?
So he was made by other robots, or he was made by like some humans or some other living creature that made a robot and then adopted him as part of the family because he was so cool and he was so much like a real creature.
Yeah. Or is his parent like this big evil genius dude?
I think I feel like that creates a whole nother story, and we gotta do a sequel then.
Yeah, true.
Which is not a bad thing, but for this, I'm kind of inclined to go with your first one, and then kind of the gut was that like he finds out he doesn't have parents because robots don't have parents, right? But then we kind of explain that in either like his creators were so cool they effectively are parents, and kind of philosophically at the end of the day, what's the difference? You know what I mean? Like, yeah. Kids all over the world who have.
Maybe he wanted to go to school with all the normal kids, kind of maybe like the Pinocchio complex.
Program school. He had to go get programmed.
Maybe he wanted to go to school with all the regular kids, and then his parents were like, "Dude, you can't go to school. You're kind of a robot." And then that's when he's like, "Oh, that sucks. You're not my real parents." And then he gets
he didn't even know up until then. He was like completely unaware.
Yeah,
it's like they busted out Santa Claus.
Maybe his parents took it for granted that he wasn't that he didn't really understand that.
Yeah, maybe they just okay.
Because parents need to be cool. I'm tired of parents being stupid and
parents don't realize he doesn't even know. That's kind of interesting. Okay. So they created, whoever these are, if they're humans or aliens or whatever, they created this robot, like their own personal C-3PO or something. Mm-hmm. But then he was like so awesome and so lifelike that they like adopted him. But they just took it for granted that he was so amazing.
It's not even that they never had to file adoption papers. They just,
he's
Amazon dropped him off and they're like, all right, cool. And the reason why they never stopped to ask him, do you realize that you're adopted, is because people know that robots kind of know everything.
Or they do send him to school because they like totally have forgotten that he's a robot. They're like, yeah, of course, go to school. Like they just start treating him like a kid. And then it's like he gets to class and the kids are making fun of him and they're like, why don't I look like you? And then they kind of lie to him like parents do, like with Santa Claus, and they're like, well, you're adopted. No, right? And that's when he loses it and he runs away, right? And then that's the rest of it is his process of figuring out what they really meant. and like what is why he didn't fit in at school. Okay, so we got two ideas. We've got either they flat out tell him you can't go to school, you're a robot. You're a robot and you can't go to school. Or they just think they treat him like a kid. Like totally just forget that he's a robot. And then the kids, cruel as they are, they're the ones that discover, dude, what's wrong with you? You're like kind of weird looking.
You don't even eat cookies.
You don't even go potty break, and you don't use nap time. You just lay asleep creepily.
Or I don't know if you remember this one, but there was a part in Robots and Aliens where actually it's the part where you jump out of a Jack in the Box and Rob gets the poop scared out of him, but it's like a pile of batteries. So maybe the robot isn't potty trained yet, so he keeps leaving these batteries on the floor. And he doesn't realize that he's pooping on the floor. And the kids are like, you are completely nasty, dude. No,
something with there could be a joke in there, something with charging ports. Like he goes and stands in the corner and has to charge during recess or something.
Or all these kids have these cell phones and they say, "Hey Siri," and and he like wakes up.
Or they treat him just like a kid. Okay, so that either one of those would explain why he runs away, right? Either he's pissed at them because he's not allowed to be like the other kids and they won't let him go to school, or he's pissed at the kids because they're making fun of him, and then his parents tell him he's adopted, and then he just gets upset because he doesn't understand and he runs away. So then that's when he meets the monster. So what's the deal with the monster? Like, what did you say? He's got anger issues, or he's like a loner, or what's his deal?
I was thinking he can have anger issues, but then if he was angry, no wonder people don't like him. And he's not gonna, if he's constantly angry, then he's probably not gonna want any friends. Whereas if he's just misunderstood, I was always thinking of the monster as, you remember when you were in school, there was always this one kid that was just obnoxiously huge, and people always called him tiny. And
he was like mega threatening looking, even though he was probably like a teddy bear.
Exactly. So I was always thinking that's the situation for the monster, where he's just misunderstood, and people might tease him and stuff. Just because he all he wants is a friend, dude.
So he's like that giant hairy monster, like crammed in the little school desk.
That's funny.
So does he go to like monsters? Like, does he live on a planet with other monsters, or is he like hanging out with humans? Like, do we want this to be like a human crossbreed thing? I feel like what's more important, that he's big and scary and he's a monster, or everyone's a monster, he just happens to be big and scary, all the rest are like cute cuddly like Japanese monsters?
I think maybe they're on Earth, and ironically enough, the monster sleeps under the bed. So there is both of them on a closet or something like that.
Yeah. So they're both on Earth, the robot too.
Yeah.
Okay. So
I think maybe the robot is just like a really cool technologically advanced thing.
He's like one of these rich Norwegian, perfectly happy, best country in the world inventions.
He's that robot.
Yeah.
He vacuums like a maniac.
He's the chick from Ex Machina.
Yeah. Oh, moment.
Yeah. It's like so. Okay. So he's the big misunderstood monster that probably lashes out. You know, like that video of that big kid who gets bullied and then he just lays into that kid.
Just slams that kid. How about that? That looked like it hurt.
So he's a misunderstood monster that is like big. Let's try to like describe him physically. So he's big and like menacing, but there's got to be something about him that you can tell he's not really, right? It's kind of like, I don't want to like go there, but he's kind of like Sully from Pixar, right? Like Monsters Inc., like big and hairy, but maybe not hairy, but like, you know, he's a big scary monster, but there's something lovable about him.
Yeah. Like maybe what's the not Forrest Gump, but his shrimp boat buddy?
Oh, yeah.
Like you know, maybe he's got this well, I don't want to really get into characteristics at all. Because that'll be cool. That'll be cool for like some of the brainstorming stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's got to be big and menacing in some way, but he's not really. And maybe here's something. Maybe he is big, huge, and fluffy, but then when he gets wet, he's just a stick.
Like a dog. It's all hair. So speaking of, I don't know, don't let me go too far off, but quickly rant, because this is pretty important for viewers, and I know it was important for me as an artist and like developing stuff. We've already brought up two kind of referential things. I brought up Pixar, you brought up Forrest Gump. Like, I think people are really afraid of talking about references and of talking about what's already been done, and they're so afraid of being unique, and they're so afraid of copying someone else. But I mean, I think the reality of it is there's so much content out there that you're never going to make anything completely original. And besides, the way that kind of like the human brain works anyway is we brainstorm, right? You build off of each other. You build off of the things that you stand on the shoulders of the giants before that whole thing, right? So it's like, and I'm not saying here we're going to go and rip off a Pixar monster and, you know, some famous robot and just make a story, but, you know, there's certainly like referential things from our childhood and stuff that we can build off of and that we can learn from and that we can say kind of like that, but not that. And, you know, people always say it's the way you tell something, you do or tell a story that's already been done, but with your own twist. I mean, that's kind of, I think that's something important to keep in mind, because I think it's really easy for people to constantly be like, well, I don't want to do that because Pixar did it, or I don't want to do that, I want to be unique. And it's really easy to kind of kill your entire creative process when you're so focused on creating something unique.
And even when you go to pitch a show, from what I've learned, I've never pitched a show, but from what I've learned, people want that
they do
comparison right off the bat. They want, you know, like when I pitch Robots and Aliens, I always say it's The Odd Couple meets
Alien
versus Predator.
Yeah, that whole like mixing meats thing is like really actually very common in the film and like movie and cartoon and all that, because it gives people like a quick frame of reference, and then it's like they mash together two things in their brain that haven't been mashed before, right? And then it suddenly creates the spark, like, oh, that's cool. I could see where that could go. So it's like, it's weird because the creative industry has such like a taboo about it. Like, we don't talk about who our references are and where we got our inspiration from, because you're so afraid of being, well, you copied that, or that's already been done. And it's like, well, newsflash, like pretty much everything's been done since Shakespeare, right? I mean, kind of, right? And even his stuff was half stolen from, you know, the guys that came before him. So
right.
I want to kind of stress that I don't want anyone to ever not do something because they're afraid of being unoriginal. The biggest task is to just push forward and work with what you have. Now, that's to say, if you're working and you realize, wow, this exact thing has been done, then you reroute. But
right. Otherwise, just keep going until you get a cease and desist.
Well, yeah, there's that too. You know, it's what is that? There's like that really famous saying about, you know, good artists borrow, great artists steal. I think it was Mark Twain or something, right? So it's like we're not condoning stealing, but I know that personally I've really stumbled with that in the past. Like I'm like, well, this is not original, or that's pretty much just like this. And the cool part about that is you collaborate. Like you bounce your idea off someone else and they say, oh, well, that's kind of like this. And then you can immediately say, no, but this and this. And then you've created a new idea, right? So anyway,
right.
So he's big and he's menacing.
He's big, he's menacing. He's extremely kind and lonely.
So are his lash out, is he aggressive? Like you originally said he has anger management issues. Is that because he lashes out because he doesn't know how else to communicate?
I just threw that out there. I just threw that out there because monsters have a tendency to be real jerks. But I think,
well, I feel like we could show that side of him, right? That could be like his frustration
possibly
comes out. Maybe.
Yeah.
Or
that
maybe
that opens a door.
Or he's not really like that until he befriends the robot, and then he gets protective, right? And you could see this interesting side of him that, like, not only is he a big teddy bear, he's like really loyal and protective of his new friend or something.
Yeah, because that could present an escalation point where they become friends. Someone starts to pick on the robot. The robot might
power down.
Want to start a fight or yeah, all of a sudden he shuts down. Yeah, that makes sense because if you're getting picked on, it's the fight or flight thing, right?
Right.
So either you're gonna get puffy and go at whoever it is that's giving you a hard time, or you're gonna shut down, and that presents problems too. Because that's what detaches kids in real life. That's what detaches kids from learning is if they're getting constantly picked on, all of a sudden they don't want to go to school anymore.
Yeah. Or told they can't do something and told that what they're doing, the way they do it is stupid, and, all that constantly being put down and roadblocks in your way is kind of. So it kind of seems like they're similar in the fact that they share a background. I don't want to say abandoned, but they have lonely issues, and they also are not getting along with others at school. But they might be very different in that the robot
they process those situations differently, where the robot might shut down. The monster gets aggressive. Now, this might be an interesting point too, where maybe we see a situation where the monster is constantly being aggressive, but then he gets in trouble for being aggressive. And then the robot then sees the monster getting in trouble for being aggressive, and then he turns aggressive. You know what I mean? So then there's this the flip of the script where the monster then starts to shut down, because every time he defends his friend, he gets in trouble. Maybe he gets put in a cage. Maybe he gets put back under his bed, whatever the case may be. He has to serve some sort of punishment. So then the robot needs to learn how to.
So it's almost like they learn each other's best trait, but within moderation, right? Like kind of. The monster learns when he needs to back off and let things be, and the robot realizes when he needs to stand up for himself and become aggressive.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
I mean, if that's the lesson, if that's the takeaway that we're going to end up,
maybe not.
That's one of the takeaways. That might be there, but the fact that it's cool to defend yourself and the people that mean something to you, but you need to be aware that you can very easily go overboard. So you need to find that balance.
And be aware of your own strengths and or physical prowess.
Could you imagine if they both went beast mode and just like monster starts throwing furniture and then lasers start coming out of the robot?
It's like straight up. What was that movie? It's totally escaping me right now. The Pacific Rim. It's like straight up Pacific Rim. They go Pacific Rim on the playground.
No swings for anyone.
that would be them fighting against each other. So that is indeed another question. Like perhaps they become friends, but the rift is between them at some point. Because there's kind of those old classic. There's kind of the three classic conflict. Because obviously we don't need to rehash, but maybe for folks who really know nothing about story, or this is their first project, or they're 12 years old and they're like, I want to write a story. There's kind of like those three classic story conflicts, because a conflict is what's interesting and what teaches people and makes them grow and all that stuff. So there's like man versus man. So that would be like the monster versus the robot. Then there's man versus nature. So that's kind of literally man versus nature. And then
it would be
man versus self.
Robot. It would be the robot and the monster get caught in a hurricane.
Well, that, or a little bit more metaphorically, it could be the monster and the robot are man versus nature, which is kind of society and the kids and kind of just the chaos of growing up. It could be that as well.
Okay.
And then there's man versus man, where we're not really doing that because we've already introduced. I'm sorry, not man versus man versus self, where we're not really doing that because that's where you're just struggling with, which they are doing that in their own sense, right? They're dealing with their own problems and becoming, but that's not really like the crux of the story. It's not like some character's inner struggle with themselves. I mean, maybe it kind of is a little bit.
Maybe there's this cute little girl that they want to. That they're like, oh my God.
Boy, love triangle.
Yeah.
I don't know if we want to go there.
Maybe not a.
So what did we do? We got
like a vacuum.
We got a robot. We got a robot, a monster. What's the girl?
A remote control car or something like that. You know what I mean? Maybe there's a toy. Maybe there's a toy that they fight over, and then it gets like ripped in half or busted in whatever way. Oh, but
I feel like that really.
Let's go back to conflict real quick, because while you were talking, I thought of this situation. When I was a kid, I went to school with this girl named April, and people kind of picked on her because she was a little bit different. And me, I didn't really.
Don't lie.
I was always I never did, because it sucks to get picked on, right? So then we were on the slide, and April went in front of me, and then I climbed up in back of her, and then she's sitting on top of the slide, and then she peed down the slide because she didn't want anyone else to go down the slide. And I'm like,
dude,
that's why people tease you all the damn time.
Well, there's something wrong there.
I mean, I climb back down. So that's man versus man.
Man versus pee. Man versus bodily functions.
So maybe the robot oils down the slide.
Slicks it up. This is mine. So I think I personally don't want to go on the route of like there being a love interest or there being an object that they fight over, just because I feel like the initial interest of this concept is, well, an adopted robot and like a big teddy bear menacing monster, and that kind of doesn't really feed into that storyline or that theme, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I suppose in like a much larger story, there could be like a sub-story of that would definitely like illustrate who they are as individual characters and how they. But I feel like maybe in a 30-page book, it's kind of that would be like a major diverge. Yeah. So I just had a thought, and I don't know. It would kind of complicate what we've already got through, but that's okay. So we kind of already have inadvertently said they're both going to school or they have problems at school. Mm-hmm. Do they meet at school, or like, is the robot sent to school or not sent to school? And then he comes to the monsters area and joins his school, or does this all unravel because they both go to school? I don't think I'm making sense. Is it like,
No, it does make sense. How about
do they both flee their lives and they meet at a school, or is it like one is the new kid at school? Like, because it seems like school is kind of the common meeting place location. So it's like, how does that unravel, and how?
they could both be at school? They're both different, so they both don't fit in. It could be something as simple as it's lunchtime and uh, everyone else is having, a ham and cheese sandwich. The monster is eating. What do monsters eat? Like children's souls? I don't know. But whatever it is, maybe a big pile of like worms and goofy stuff, Um,
Or you go the other route and complete opposite. He eats something like
sushi.
really healthy and clean.
I'm having a salad.
Okay.
But either way, he could be sitting at a table by himself.
Right. Yeah, the big old monster alone, and like that'd be a great. I could see that image, like the cafeteria with all the kids, and there's like this huge monster by himself, and then you get the robot with his lunch tray. Like, where do I sit? Oh man, there's only one seat left, and it's next to the big awful monster.
And he's sitting there, and the table is all bent in the middle from
because he's so big. And so maybe actually that could like the robot himself misjudged the monster, right? It's not like they're like immediately friends because they're both outcasts. It's more like he misjudges him. Maybe even the monster gets up and moves when he sits down. Like, I don't want to sit next to you. Why would? Okay, so we've got they meet at school. And there's like a lunchroom seating situation, which maybe is sort of the beginning of the relationship. That's kind of how we meet them together. Like maybe like the first couple pages is like 2 pages about the robot, 2 pages about the monster, and then they meet at school, and then the rest of the thing is about both of them, type of thing.
Mm-hmm. I can see that.
Okay. So I feel like with that premise, it almost makes more sense if we stick from the 2 kind of parents options.
Mm-hmm.
It seems weird if they were like, no, you're a robot. You can't go to school. And then he runs away and then goes to school. Like, although that seems like exactly what he wants. Like, I'm going to run away and go to school. I don't care what you say. But like, that's kind of like a suspension of disbelief. Like, how does he get to this school and how did he enroll there if his parents weren't? It almost seems like it makes more sense if they're like, they don't even think twice. They're like, yeah, you're totally like our kid. Go to school. Like, without, it's almost like they're the more helicopter-y parents. Like, they want the best for their kid and they totally view him as a kid. And then the monster's parents are just like MIA. Or we don't never find out who they are.
And maybe that's why the robot's parents actually care, because maybe it's a science experiment that the dad was doing. And that's why, and I mean, if we want to go deep, maybe they're having problems having a baby, and like that's all some.
Well, I mean, that's a conversation, right? Because I work at a very corporate company, like, DreamWorks, and I have worked at, and it's, a lot of stuff gets filtered out through the corporate hierarchy and sort of the mass appeal filter, where you got to make sure nothing's offensive, and this is for the widest audience. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, right? It's people badmouth corporatism and like that whole, like, Hollywood doesn't make anything cool because it's all about, but really what it comes down to is they're trying to reach the widest market possible. And when you do that, not that that's bad, but you tend to make something that is average because you're trying to reach an average audience. So I guess there's a question here where this is more like do we want to tell the story we really want to tell? And even if it's a little edgy or like might offend some people, or do we want to kind of create a wholesome story that can be shared with everybody?
Well, if a couple not being able to have babies,
I mean, I don't think that's off.
then I mean,
Well, I don't think it offends
I've been
anyone,
in
but
I've been in that situation. So if you're offended by
right.
that, then
Well,
I
maybe
almost said bad words, but so yeah, I mean,
maybe
and
offense
it's
is the wrong word for that situation, but you know what I mean. It's like if that's too taboo or it's too like you know off the
and maybe
cuff
we
for the average audience,
maybe we just have it
but
there.
maybe it's not.
Maybe we have it there. We might not even have to mention it, but just
Yeah, I mean, there's
knowing
also
why would this couple build a robot? And
well, and that's the
we
cool thing
know that.
about yeah, that's the cool thing about doing you know children's material or illustrated material because you're telling a story, but you're also illustrating one, right? So it's like
Mm-hmm.
we can imply a lot of stuff without actually saying it or without even actually making it a story point, right? There can be little hints in the background or in the robot's house or that his parents like they tried to have a kid or they really want to have a normal kid but they couldn't. Like that can all
Mm-hmm.
be implied without actually saying it.
Right.
Or, you know, you just kind of get the reader to think about stuff like that. Like why in the hell do they have why are they treating this robot like a baby? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, I
Which
like
in
that. I
which
like the fact that we have parents that maybe were having problems having a baby, and so they built one together. They're like,
yeah.
take that, and that's a small, you know, you were talking about man versus nature. That's a small version
Yeah,
of
it is.
man versus nature. And then they found a resolution. They created this robot, and that's why they're helicoptering this robot.
Right.
Um,
Well, it's kind of interesting because it kind of I love concepts and themes that kind of make you question well that reflect on something in the real world. Like obviously we're talking about like not being able to have kids, but there's like a comedy or like a whimsical aspect of this that actually is asking a much larger and deeper question, and I think that's actually really important to like what makes stories powerful and what makes them last because it's kind of like we're posing the question like this robot is not human, he is adopted, so but what makes that any different than being their actual biological child because even I mean, not just metaphorically, they physically made him, right? You know, not in the
mhm.
traditional sense of making babies, but they made him together. You know what I
Right,
mean? Like, there's some
right,
metaphors in there, and there's like, it kind of poses the ultimate question of like, even if you are an adopted kid, like, why is it any different just because you weren't blood? Like,
right,
what's the difference? Which
right.
is kind of, I guess, the point of that. So I think that's kind of interesting.
Which then feeds into the relationship with the monster too, because helicopter parenting keeps this robot from being able to defend himself, and then he goes out into the
Right,
real world, and all of a sudden this monster is there taking the place of the parents by being his protector.
right. Being his friend. Yeah.
Right.
So okay, so then we would probably have to. I mean, that type of stuff we need to explain or show, right? So it's like when they drop him off at school, they need to like be the only ones that usher him into the class, and they like make sure he's found a desk, and it's like it doesn't need to go through the whole book, obviously, but like the intro pages, I think we definitely need to establish that they're kind of like they're the hover parents.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
because they're really concerned about this experiment. Hmm. Which that's interesting. Which you know relates to real life. I guess you could say your own live kid is an experiment. Hmm. I
Yeah.
like that. So
Which then gave me an idea as far as the monster goes. Because maybe he's kind of the opposite, where you know monsters have tempers. Maybe his parents are busy being monstrous, and it's the opposite. Like I don't want to say it like this, like the monster, the dad monster's putting cigarettes out on this kid. I don't want to go that crazy, but
no, but you can imply all that. again,
Right.
like it's
I mean, because if you think about it, what the hell is a monster doing in school? Because it's a safe place.
right. Man, we're getting deep real fast. And the fact that he's the monster and his dad is a literal like a figurative. He's a literal monster. His dad's a figurative monster. That's
Yeah.
kind of neat. Hmm. Yeah. So it's like So when the robot arrives with his hover parents and they like usher him into class, like by contrast, the monster's parents are like totally MIA. Like they're not there. We can maybe have like a page where he comes home after school and like dad's asleep on the couch, or the parents just aren't there. I mean, we could also go the route where they're just missing and it's sort of like he's on his own. He's had to figure out the world by
The
himself.
dad is there drinking a monster drink, watching monster trucks.
I could totally see the watching monster trucks. That's kind of funny. That's a funny little Easter egg. Okay, so potentially, and here's the other thing. I want to like get this out also. Like, I think in brainstorming sessions, it's important that like everything's on the table. Like, I don't think anything should be taboo, and you should be able to explore any topic. So I think it's fair that we can at least leave it on the table that maybe his parents are physically abusive or mentally abusive. You know, they're just like terrible people. I think that's a real topic and it's something that should be discussed. And it doesn't mean that has to be the focus of the story, but I think that can lend itself to a lot of explanation as to why the monster's the way that he is. And also just kind of how you go ahead.
I was just going to say, maybe he does have anger management issues, because if you grow up in a situation like that with some parents that don't know how to express themselves with words, or calmly, you are a direct representation of where you come from. Right. So maybe he does struggle with existing in the real world, only because he doesn't know any better. And maybe that's why. Maybe it's not because he's maybe it's not just because he's a monster, but it's because he's a little bit of an angry monster.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, I mean, and I remember reading somewhere, some social psychologist or one of these guys that writes these like psychology books specifically about like how, I can't remember. I'll dig it up and we'll put it in the show notes. But I remember the quote really specifically because it kind of resonated with me. And I was like, God, that makes such perfect, not just poetic sense. Like he just happened to choose the right words, but like it makes total sense. And it was something along the lines of, we have all these kids that are acting out and they get violent and they act out. He's like, and the reason we call it they act out, the reason we say that specific phrase is because they have not learned how to communicate. Being violent, being physical is the only way they know how to communicate. So they act out their feelings. And I thought that was like, wow, I've never really heard it said like that. So it's like, they wouldn't even have to be physically abusive. It's like, sometimes you just have like these emotionally absent parents, or like parents who have substance abuse problems, or totally just space cadets, or, are too busy working and they're just emotionally not there and they don't communicate with their kids and they're just not in their life. So in a way that is kind of, emotional abuse, right? So this kid has never learned how to communicate. So he's going to act out in anger. So I guess we wouldn't necessarily have to go like straight up physical abuse, but it just seems like they're parents that just couldn't care less. And they're like, it's funny how like stuff kind of writes itself, and like you get these like moments where it's like, oh well, duh, because he's a monster. He's the imaginary creature in the house, right? It's like they don't even care that he exists. Like he lives under the bed or in the closet. Like he's the imaginary part of their life. I mean, I still think they need to be monsters, but it's still kind of, you know, it's like kids have imaginary friends. No, he is the okay, hang on. So is he an imaginary? That one made me cough. So this might not work with where we're going. Is he in fact an imaginary friend? Is he the robot's imaginary friend, or is he real?
Dude, that could be a Sixth Sense type of thing. Because, yeah, like what if it's the robot's alter ego, or like the Ghost in the Machine type of thing?
Yeah, like the Machinist, or what was that? I mean, there's all sorts of like Fight Club. You know, there's all sorts of alter ego things. But that could be kind of clever. It's almost like that's why all the kids ignore the monster at school, because they can't see him. Like, he's totally imaginary. Right. Like, he gets so angry, and he's like, "God, I hate your Bible." Spoiler alert. That's part of this process, right? You're gonna see it from beginning to end. You're gonna know how the last page ends.
Everyone's gonna be like, we already know, so we don't.
If you were here to be surprised, wrong podcast.
I really like that, though.
I mean, you might be surprised by other things, but not the story. No, I think that's kind of cool. I think that almost could be. And again, we don't have to come out flat at the end and be like, well, the monster was imaginary, but like that can also be strong. I mean, it could be said. Some things can just be said. It's almost like it's the robot's way of, yeah, it's the robot's alter ego, and it's who he wishes he was sometimes.
Or, I mean, it might be a coming of age tale where, you know, maybe the robot is just kind of tired of his parents constantly on him, and so this monster comes out and is just like you were talking about acting out. He's acting out because he doesn't know, he's a robot. He doesn't know how to, you know, be a human kid or whatever,
right?
Or he doesn't know how to what
well, he doesn't even know how to. It almost seems like they raised him as a recluse. Like, it was like, you're our little baby robot, and like it's almost like he hasn't had much contact with real people and up until now, and it's kind of reflective on real life. It's like when you go away to school, even at 4 and 5 years old, that's the first time you're away from your parents and you get to explore who you are. And it's kind of like, I guess if that's the moment he meets the monster, that's kind of like the moment he has this other option of who he could be, or part of his personality.
Well, his personality is going to come out, or the monster, the monster part of his personality comes out, because the reality of the situation is he's in school, he doesn't fit in, so he's going to make his way to that table that no one is sitting at. Right. And that's where he meets his alter ego.
Wow, that's clever. That's clever. I like that a lot. That's his, because that's kind of his moment of realization, like, I don't belong here. Like, none of these kids like me. They're making fun of me. He comes into the... So then there's the question, you could have a picture where it's like the monster isn't there. So it's like he's in the crowded room with the empty table, and then he goes to sit down and the monster is there. But maybe that's a little too on the nose, and it's like the monster's there.
The monster's there.
Yeah, because that's like his choice.
Because that's where, he's walking to. I hate to say it this way, but it needs to come out.
No, it's fine.
He's meeting his destiny.
No, he is, right, because he could have it's like we could make two very clear choices. It's like, because that's the flip side of destiny, right? Is choice. So it's like you can propose another choice for the robot. You could put a very clear other option. We could even have like some light sort of showing on it. So it's like, here's an option between the popular kids that's like crammed in there, and you'd be part of the group, but you'd be crammed in there. Or there's the table with the monster, right? So you could present him with a choice. Or you just say...
That's brilliant, because you can try to hammer away and try to force yourself into fitting into society,
right?
Or you meet your destiny,
right? Like, they don't like you. They don't even want you to sit there anyway. Why would you sit there? I mean, destiny's already saying don't sit there, but it's still a choice, right? And it's almost like the monster's the only guy that hasn't made fun of him. I mean, I guess he hasn't met him until now. This is like when he appears, but it's kind of like, why wouldn't you choose this? Even though it's a big scary monster. I mean, and that's kind of, that is part of growing up. That's part of coming of age. That's part of accepting part of who you are. You have to face a monster, right? You have to face a challenge. I mean, not that sitting by the popular.
Let me tell you, a lonely life is scary. So there's a monster.
Yeah, it's very scary.
Dude, this is perfect.
Yeah,
football, icky
stuff
shuffle.
like starts to write itself when you get to a certain point. I'm glad that it is moving this well, because I will admit I've been in brainstorming sessions where it doesn't go that well, right? You just hit walls. And no, this is cool. So, okay, so we've got the helicopter parents that raised this robot as their child. Kind of, they didn't ever even give him any hint that he was something other than a child.
Mm-hmm.
They send him off to school, where he, of course, gets picked apart. They're like, "Whoa, you're a robot!" Like, it's the first time he's heard that. like maybe they don't actually say you're a robot, but they're like, "What's with the metal kid?" You know. And then lunchtime happens. That's sort of the beginning of the adventure. His first choice, where he meets the monster. Okay, so from there, it's kind of like we could write vignettes or something of like how, because if we're really kind of viewing the monster more as this possible side of his personality, I mean, it's serving more purposes than that. I mean, it is an actual character. I don't want to get all philosophical. It is a character, and we should treat it as such. But it's kind of like, it's not only serving as part of his personality, but it's also serving as I don't know, I lost my train of thought.
I think that we could show the robot just having a good time with his new buddy. And maybe the monster even brings him home to, play with the toys and stuff like that. And we don't need to tell anyone this is all imaginary.
No, of course not. That's like the implied part, and that's the nerd conspiracy theory. Like, I think the monster's fake. That's like the fun part of a story, is you leave. Yeah. I mean, in this case, for our viewers, like, they know everything about how we came up with this idea. But in reality, like, when you guys are at home making your own stuff and all the stuff you pick off of bookshelves, you don't really know where those ideas came from. And that's like the fun of making a really good book and of a reader, is you don't fully know where the ideas came from. So you get to inject your own thoughts onto it and your own experiences of life. So you could say, "Well, I think the monster might be fake," and that's not. And another person would be like, "No, he's totally real. He's just another creep that he befriended." You know, it's like the two misfits. Like, each person will kind of, hopefully, if it's done right, be able to like add their own 2 cents to it. In this case, you get to see how we came up with an idea. So mystery's gone.
Yeah. And remember that you don't always have to have some kind of weird, crazy twist at the end. If you just have a story to tell the story.
Yeah, and I don't think in this case we need to like reveal that he was make-believe. Like, I don't think that's important. I think it's more about this kid, this robot. See, I'm already calling him a kid. This robot learning kind of how to deal with the school society and hierarchy, and in a way, I mean, like we said, what's the difference if you are adopted from being an actual kid of these parents, when they treat you exactly the same and everything else is the same? In that, it's kind of this reflected here as well. It's like, well, what's the difference if he's imaginary, if he's an imaginary part of his personality, or he is real? Like, he's serving the same purpose in the same way. Like, you may have a huge effect on my life, and like, you taught me something. It's really kind of no different than me teaching myself something by digging deep in my brain, right? So it's kind of, that's the cool part about storytelling and about writing, is it's like metaphors and reality are kind of one and the same. I mean, writing is just one big metaphor. So I don't think we need to actually ever reveal that, oh, it was, the Sixth Sense moment or the Hours. It's like it never needs to be like, oh, he was fake the whole time, because I think that kind of it kind of detracts from what just happened, right?
Yeah,
I think so, doesn't it? I think it would, because I think that almost becomes the focus of the story, right? It's like, well, I'll have to think about that one.
Moving on.
Yeah. Yeah. Some stuff you just got to leave there and come back to it later, because I don't really know. I don't have an answer for that one. We'll see how it feels when we get to that.
Yeah.
That section. Yeah. So back to what you were saying. So we show now that he's awkwardly or unwillingly befriended the monster, or willingly. It's like we need to show like how they play together on the playground, and the other kids are like, whoa, look at those two freaks. And maybe the monster takes him home, and like that's when we can realize that being a monster,
building, I think it would be important to show just how neither one of these two fit.
Yeah.
Because then creates more of an importance to their relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so we could definitely do some stuff about them playing together at school. We could do,
or it could be, let's set it up like this. Let's set it up as they start hanging out. They start developing their friendship, right? And then they get picked on at school again, like however many days. I don't know if it even matters, but later on they get picked on at school, and then they defend themselves, or they defend each other,
because now they're a team. Now they don't feel so lonely.
Yeah. But then what would also be cool is we should maybe investigate how each of them react when they go to each other's houses.
Yeah, I think that's really kind of interesting, because we also want to highlight, although they're the same, we want to highlight some of the differences, because I think that's almost more where you learn from your friends and from where you learn from your family. Like, yeah, it's easy for us to sit here and be like, oh, I like football and you like, and we both like this. Like, that's easy, and that's, I think, how most friendships are started. But I think really deep friendships and meaningful stuff comes out from like your differences and like how you learn from each other. So it's like when the robot goes to the monster's house, he's kind of like horrified by like, it's so empty and it's so unlike his house, and it's like his parents aren't there really. If they are there, they're totally busy. They're busy, or they're not engaged. And like he reveals that he has to sleep under the bed or in the closet, right? And maybe it's because like we could also introduce the whole like, a nod to the like poor and rich thing. Like it's like the monster's the poor kid. Like there's not even enough room in there, because the robot's been given everything. I mean, he's been given the gift of life. He's a specimen of technology. Like that's the ultimate form of riches, right? So it's like he's like the rich kid who doesn't know any better, that he has it so good, and the monster is like the poor kid that's making do in his. So I mean, we could kind of hint at that too. Like they don't have room. He's got to sleep under the.
Yeah, and that's where that cliche might come from. Is monsters are poor because they don't know how to control themselves. So they sleep in the closet or the bed or whatever, just because that's where they sleep, and not necessarily that they're not necessarily that the monster is a horrible kid and then he's getting punished and pushed into the closet, but
right.
that's just where his bed is.
Yeah, because the other bed
your room looks a lot like a closet.
Right.
They're probably trying to pay rent in New York is what they're trying to do.
That's what this is sounding like. Yeah. The dad and the son monster live in like a 300 square foot room. And the dad's like, no, no, no. I call the bed. You get under the bed. You get the closet. No, no, no. In New York, you don't even get a closet. You get the pantry.
Yeah. You get the hole in the wall.
So then, like, what happens when they go to the robots? Like, it almost seems like the monster would freak out. Like, are you kidding me? Like,
yeah,
well, maybe
like
not.
they obviously when they get home, there's going to be, you know, some cookies there. The parents are there, and the parents actually welcome them and ask them about their day, and you know, it's just like this overwhelming amount of parenting that's happening, and the robot's going to be
It's
like,
like,
"Fuck, we're here again," and and then the monster's going to be eating it up because he doesn't get that at home.
yeah. Yeah.
Let me
Like,
tell you
come
a
on,
story. Let me tell you a
no, go
story.
ahead.
When I was in high school, I used to go to my friend's house, and they loved me. I would walk in and be, oh my God, look at it. Carlos is here, blah, blah, blah. Oh, do you want something to drink? And she would get me a can of pop, right? And so my friend would be like, Ma, can I get one? She's like, leave a quarter on the counter.
That's kind of how I remember my best friend. That's how I was. She like, because I would offer to like clean up the dishes when I was done, and I would like help her carry stuff. It's just like my kid never does any of that. She was totally like, she'd offer. Yeah, I can relate to that one.
You're starting to get robot voice. But yeah, I mean, one of the important things to take from this little thing, this exchange that's happening between Jack and I, is you can bring in personal stories to, not necessarily that you know we're going to have where the monster comes in and the robot's parents tell the robot to leave a quarter on the counter,
Right.
but if we share stories, it might trigger something.
Yeah.
Then I mean, we've already gotten so many notes off of this story just by sharing ideas and stuff, and it turns into a snowball effect, or a avalanche effect.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think
And that's kind of, you know, where why you would take time to share stories. You know, April peed on the slide and ruined the fun for everyone. You know, this other guy, I don't know if he's ever going to listen to this, but my buddy Thomas, he used to have to leave quarters on the countertop for, you know, just for something to drink.
yeah.
It just goes to show you, I mean, stories come from somewhere, and again, we go back to you know, that unique idea. All of this stuff has happened.
Yeah.
Kids
It
have
has happened.
had helicopter parents. Kids have had horrible monstrous parents. You
Yeah.
know, stories like this have been told, but not exactly like this. So anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think back to that topic. I think that's a really good reassessment or reframing of the thing, because it's like, I'm sure everybody's heard like all the stories have been told already. It's like, well, yeah, because they all come from reality. Like you were just saying, like these stories, even the ones that you were afraid of copying, like all of Pixar and all of Disney and all of, you know, Maurice Sendak and whoever, like you want to, all those stories came from somewhere, and chances are they came from some conglomerate, you know, accumulation of experiences that person or that group of writers have had. And it's like, so yeah, they already borrowed from something else. It may not have been another movie or another book, but they borrowed from actual experiences or actual events in human, you know, existence. So I think it is important to do, especially in the brainstorming phase. I mean, I think once you get rolling, it's people can do lone projects. I mean, I've done it, but I have to say it's difficult. It's really hard to write a concept. I mean, doing the illustration and actually like writing some words, I think that part's easier, because that's more. That's the part that's your flavor, right? I think that's the part that can be very unique to you. This is the way I draw, or this is the way I write, or I speak, or I act, or I film. Like all that stuff, I think is because it's tied to a physical act. Like I draw, I write, I speak, I act, right? But it's like a story is a group of events, right? It's not there really is no I story. I mean, even the ones that have only one character, there's still another event or another object or an environment or something else acting against it. So I think in the development phase, it's really important to brainstorm with someone else if you can.
Just for the different points of view too.
Yeah. Or just to point out something you missed, or like you know, you say something and you didn't even realize the genius of it, or you totally missed something better in there, and the other person's like, oh yeah, and then that, or you don't even realize what you just said, like this is cool, or you also realize what's bad. I mean, you're like, that's not really funny, or that's like not that's not the type of story we're trying to tell here, you know.
That's happened a lot.
Well, and that's the thing is like working on your own, you don't have that feedback loop. And I guess that's kind of like a personal thing. If you think art is purely like a self-expression, then leave it that way. But I don't think, at least coming from my own thing, this project that we're working on, the process projects, and I think anything that's meant to be consumed by others, such as a book or a story, is not art in that sense, right? It is meant to be a collaborative thing with your viewer or your consumer. A piece of art is more like something that's gonna, I thought of this, I'm saying this, I'm putting it on a wall. That's kind of not what this is, right? It's more, it's a feedback type of thing. And I think that loop is really important. So getting it where you can, if you can pair up with somebody, or even if you just have a friend that you can, your mom, your imaginary monster friend to bounce ideas off of, like it's super important.
Yep, I agree.
So
where did we leave it?
We're at the part where they go to each other's houses, which I think is pretty good, and they react in different ways. So I think, just judging by my own experience and kind of how far this would have gotten us to the book, it's kind of like we're probably just right around half, or just slightly past the halfway mark. So it's like you need to start ramping up towards your.
I'm glad you said that, because I was afraid you're going to be like, okay, so we're on page 4.
Well, I mean, it all depends on how we pace it and how we outline it, and you can give more time to this section and more time to that. But I would say it kind of feels like we're at the midway mark, and we're quickly approaching the climax. And I guess it's more of a question: do we want the climax to be between the argument between the two? Like, is it kind of there? Because I know we didn't talk about it much, but I think somewhere in these playground vignettes or something, they have to get picked on, and we have to show how the monster's aggressive, how the robot is not, how the robot shuts down. Well, we did talk about that a little bit. So maybe it's like we need to approach our big climax where either the two have to kind of clash, and it's like a disagreement of ways to do things, or they get into some sort of fight and they defriend each other briefly, and the robot is off on his own and the monster's off on his own, or there's a big climax against them where they team up against other kids or the teacher, and they kind of ultimately become accepted or respected. I'm trying to think of all the various clashes.
It could be something like the robot is acting out, and then he again has to make the decision, do you grow up and fit into society and give up the monster? Or do you not? Maybe he has to take that fork in the road again. Where the first decision, he decided to not fit into society. He went and did his own thing with his own friend. And maybe he needs to make that decision again, because maybe him hanging out with the monster has created a destructive environment for him. Maybe he's not getting along
Hmm.
with his parents that well. Maybe he's not getting good grades in school. And, how does a robot fail out of school?
That's also an ironic, funny thing. He's an adopted robot that doesn't do so well in the like logic department of school, figuring stuff out. The computation part of life. Yeah, I guess that kind of leads us back to our question of like, well, first of all, is this story more about the robot? Is he our main character, or is it a story about two characters coming together? Because it's like if we make it, the robot then has to choose. I mean, I guess we kind of already set it up that way because we don't.
You know what it might be? It might be a coming of age tale, where when you're a kid, everything is very simple. Everything is black and white because
Yeah,
your parents are telling you this is right, this is wrong. Once you go into the real world, all of a sudden, all that stuff gets fuzzy.
yeah, all the variables pop out, and you've got options, and there's different points of views, and other kids that were raised different ways, and
Right. So then, even in grade school, everything still is very black and white. And then when you go to high school, it gets a little bit fuzzier. When you go to college, there's
yeah,
basically no line. You're
yeah,
basically doing whatever it is that you want to do. Um, and colleges are notorious for kids breaking rules, and
yeah,
what it is, it's they're trying to figure out how they fit, who they're going to be in life, how they're going to fit into society.
yeah,
And maybe that's what the robot needs to confront in his life is, okay, so now that I'm growing up, quote unquote growing up, um as a kid, it was okay to act out and throw tantrums and stuff. But later on in life, if you throw tantrums and you might end up in jail,
right, right,
you might get your ass whipped. So the repercussions are a lot
right.
bigger, you know. So
Yeah,
not
that's
that we're gonna cover 20 years of his life, but
no, but I think maybe it's an important question to ask, like what rough age we're thinking this is, right? Is he entering middle school? Is he entering high school? Is it a college story? I mean, it seems like fairly young because the parents are, sending him off to school. Like, so
yeah.
if it's not like kindergarten, maybe they like homeschooled him for a while and he's going to middle school. I mean,
Yeah,
we don't have to be that
I would
specific,
say
but
I I wouldn't say anything higher than like seventh or eighth grade. Only because the consequences, not the consequences, but the challenges are so completely different.
yeah, kind of
Because
opens
like
up.
in high school, like all of a sudden you got cars, you got cigarettes, you got booze. I don't really want to go down that road.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, if there's a reason to, but I don't know. I
No,
don't
I
know
mean,
if it needs
I
to.
initially imagined it roughly that age, like middle school,
Yeah,
early what do they call it? Not pre high school. What's that called? Junior
middle
high.
school. Oh,
Junior
junior.
high. It's
Yeah,
like either middle school or junior high ish.
yeah.
Um, Obviously, we don't have to be that specific. I just am trying for my own understanding. So
Right.
yeah, I guess you bring up a good point because we're not. Yes, we've like compared the two different kids' style of thinking and different backgrounds and how the two clash, but I think we haven't introduced the consequences of either. Like being a sheltered kid and having grown up in a helicopter parent and being like the flight end of the fight or flight response and shutting down has its downsides as well. Just as being an aggressive kid with terrible or missing parents also has its downsides. Like I feel like it's time that he's like exploring right? So he's exploring how to be aggressive, or he's learning a different way of thinking of things, but then ultimately it needs to backfire, and it needs to, like, you've gone too far now. Like, there are repercussions to all behaviors, right?
Right. Because if you shut down, you're probably going to get walked over. People are going to tell you what to do. You're not going to live an exciting life. There's some people that just aren't. There's some people that are the shutdown type, and and that's just it. That's just the way that they're wired. They're introverted. So the more we talk about it, it's more or less this struggle of everyone's, am I introverted right now,
Right.
or do I become an extrovert right now? And it's trying
Yeah.
to figure out when to use what.
Yeah, that's actually, yeah, that's a pretty good way of kind of boiling down what I think we've come up with. It's like a battle of introversion versus extroversion. And like, me myself is more of a kind of an introvert. I hear a lot about like mainstream media and kind of articles and topics about how like it's better to be an extrovert, and I've been pounded with that my whole life. Like, you got to get out there, and you got to network, and you got to state your feelings, and it's, I mean, it's true. It is. Life is easier for the most part for an extrovert, but that's not saying that it doesn't have downsides, right? Like,
now, speaking as an extrovert,
right. So here we go.
We're
writing about us. Spoiler.
I can see where being more introverted would have made my career even more successful, or even
like
friendships,
in what sense?
even friendships and relationships. Knowing when to shut the hell up is a really good skill.
Yeah. Okay.
Or just and I was in the military, so I learned how to be a team player early on in life. But at the same time, even as a team player, I'm quick to make decisions, and I'm quick to tell people this is what we're going to do, da 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 da. And to tell you the truth, there's sometimes that you just don't have time for all the questions that comes from making decisions. Let's go do this. Well, what if we don't have time for what ifs?
Right.
You know what I mean? Whereas, there's a lot of times, even today, I thought this was hilarious, where I shared that link with you, and I was like, isn't that a kick in the head? It was this life coach.
Oh yeah.
It's a young white guy, and I sent this link to Jack, and it wasn't the coaching part that I was trying to show you. It was this guy had wonderful hand lettering design skills. But then he was a designer, but then he's also a life coach. And I started laughing. I'm like, what is a young white kid going to teach an old brown kid? And then Jack, and that's my extroverted side saying, you can't teach me anything. And then Jack comes back, his introverted side. He looks at things in a completely different light. He goes, white people have tough times too. And I'm like, good point.
Like, it's not, it's not brown problems or black problems. It's just different problems.
People problems, right? People problems.
Yeah.
And I mean, that might be a really good example of the story that we're trying to tell right now.
Yeah. Yeah. It kind of is. Okay. So it's almost like if I'm recapping this, it's like he's like an introverted kid that has had everything done for him, and like he's never really had to step outside of his box. now that he is, and he's faced with a lot of challenges at school and people making fun of him and all this, and he's befriended this monster who's, well, it's kind of interesting because the monster's not a full-on extrovert, right? It's not like he's going around like screaming at people and like, hi, I'm the monster, right? It's like he's like a bottled up extrovert. It's kind of
Right.
like,
And extroverts, being an extrovert doesn't necessarily mean that you're gonna, kick in the door and be like, "Hey, I'm here."
yeah,
Being an extrovert, a lot of times is you're locked and loaded,
yeah.
and then right when someone cracks the door open, then you kick it in, and that's, you know what I mean, and that's being an older extrovert.
Right.
Learning that there's a time and a place for things. So it's almost like you pull a string on a present that the gift itself is way too big for the box, and you pull that string and poof,
Right, right.
you know. And that's kind of being that extrovert. Everything is contained until someone pulls that string, and then poof. And then here in this book, where the robot is the present and or the package, right? And the monster is the gift that's inside the package that's way too big for the package. And
Right.
one of these kids is going to pull that string, right?
Yeah.
And then it's kind of like that raft is a perfect example. A raft that's in a box, and then when you open the box, and it self-inflates. All of a sudden your living room has this big ass raft in it.
It's like the airbag.
Right. Right.
Get in some trouble and it explodes.
Yeah.
So obviously that kind of leads us to like they get tested, right? Either the teacher calls them out or they get picked on the playground, and maybe like the first time the robot reverts to his, or not reverts, the robot just is his normal self, and that's when he can like shut down, and the monster's like, what the hell's happening, right? Like he's just like, I don't get you. And then the next time like they get picked on or something.
Let's investigate that before we go too far. The robot gets picked on, he shuts down, and he makes his way back home, and the monster's following him saying, what the hell was that? Like, what's going on? Why did you shut down? And then he keeps getting in his face, in his face, in his face.
That's interesting. And that's also an excuse of why they go to his house. Like he follows him all the way, because he's like on automatic docking mode.
When he shuts down, he's like a
returning
Roomba.
home. Yeah, exactly like a Roomba. Yeah.
After the Roomba finishes.
And the monster's just like the big dopey guy following, like, what's happening here? Those guys picked on you. Why are you going home? That seems like such a strange reaction. Yeah. Shuts down and returns home. And the monster follows. So then, like, we can spend some time at the kid's house, and we like, the monster maybe is like kind of learning where the kid came from and like why he is the way he is, and like he eats up all the attention he's getting. And so like maybe the monster is just like furious the whole thing home. He's like leaps and bounding like a big scary monster, like trying to wake him up out of his Roomba thing, and that's like when we can kind of see like how big and mean the monster can get. And then it's like when he gets to the house and the parents are like asking what happened and they're like all interested, then the monster kind of calms down, right? Because it's like interest and interaction is kind of like the anti-anger, right?
Or does he? Because the kid just got done having a hard time at school, and his parents are constantly trying to fix his life. And maybe they just don't know how to fix this. And so the monster gets bigger. Or the monster...
now we're getting clever.
The monster attacks...
A visual device.
Kind of attacks the parents. And the parents are like, dude, get the hell out of here, dude.
Or,
You're being a jerk. Get under the bed.
well, I feel like attacking the parents is maybe like the ultimate like repercussion. It's almost like the monster destroys his room and the parents blame it on the kid. Like, what happened? Why did you destroy your room? Right?
Oh
Like,
yeah.
it's almost like you
Because
gotta like,
the robot is in shutdown mode and the
yeah,
monster goes in and says, I can't believe you didn't do anything to him, and tears up the whole room.
yeah. And then storms off, right? Like, I'll see you tomorrow, or maybe not, type of thing.
Yeah.
If you ever wake up. Or is that maybe, or does the monster meet the parents? Maybe it's not necessary.
Um I like
I think at
that.
the end he
I
should
like
attack
that
it. Or not at the end, but I think it's like a big event. The monster just loses it and attacks the parents or something like that.
or how about this? And I don't know. Let's just go down this road to see.
No, go ahead.
But the kid is shut down, or the robot is shut down. The monster goes nuts. I can't believe it. Da, 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 tears up the whole entire room, slams the door, and walks out. Right.
Yeah.
Then the parents come in to see what all the ruckus is about, and they see this room that's just in shambles. Right.
Yeah.
And then they're not.
Rather, I know where you're going. Rather than blame him and react to him and punish him, they go out and try to fix it, or they're like,
no. They're used to, or he's used to them constantly fixing things. But now he's different. He's
well, but is he though? He didn't do it.
Well, right, but they don't know.
Right.
They don't
okay.
know. So he's acting out. And so they're like, what the hell, dude? You just tore up your room. Like, what's that all about? That's not how we do things in this house.
Right.
Right. And then he gets mad because they're not trying to fix it. They're actually coming down on him, and he's frustrated because it wasn't even him that did it. It was the monster, right?
Ah,
So now what if he then his monster comes out and he's like, wait a minute, the monster's gone. I'm pissed off and I'm, let's just say, breaking things or whatever, but the monster's not even here yet.
Yeah.
Or not even here anymore, I should say. Does that make sense?
No, it totally is. It's like metaphoring towards like teenage hormones, right? It's like they're blaming him for having a bad day at school, even though like rather than punishing him and getting on his case about his messed up room or like the way he's acted out, they're not asking like what at school caused this, or why would you come home from school and your room be torn apart? Like they're going extremely to the fact like you're a terrible kid, like you destroyed your room. And then he's like, he gets mad at that, not even because like he's mad that they're not even trying to connect with him anymore. It's like they're missing the point. They're missing maybe.
And it wasn't even him that did it.
Is that what you meant? Right.
Right. Like they don't understand.
So now he's taking the blame.
Now that he's okay, so here we go.
No, this is good because he's the only child. He's been the beneficiary of all the good stuff. Since he's the only child, he also gets all of the blame.
Yeah.
So this is like the moment when it's starting to change, right?
I think.
Sorry, I cut you off.
No, it's okay because it kind of fits with what I was gonna say. So he goes to school. Whenever you go to anything like a school, whatever, you're going to learn new skills. You're going to learn new good habits, new bad habits. You're going to learn just new things. It's all about being out and exposed to the world, right?
Yeah.
So then he's going to come home. His room is going to be in shambles. His parents don't like who he's becoming. So then they also have to change.
Aha. This is a very full story. If you can get multiple characters. Good. So what are they?
So they're upset with him because
everything
that they've ever taught him has always been, talk it out. It's not that bad. Things will be better. Everything has been sugar coated up to now, but now, since he what's the word, perceivably
Mm-hmm.
has changed and has lost control of his emotions, they're almost fighting fire with fire. They're like, we taught you
Right.
better
Which
than this.
happens. Yeah. Which
We
happens
taught
all
you
the
better than
time.
this.
Yeah.
And this is not going to happen.
Right.
And so they come down on him. So now, not only did he have a bad day at school, not only did
No, that's
the
good.
monster tear up the room, it's not his fault. His parents are coming down on him. So there's a whole bunch of weight that's falling on this kid's shoulders.
No, that's really good. Because we got to get him to the point where he explodes and can't, right? Like all of the weight comes down and he's forced to make yet another choice, which ultimately is his most significant choice, I guess. What that is yet, I'm not entirely sure, but so yeah, he's had a bad day. Well, he started off bad. Like he had no, like we started off kind of low and normal, which is good. We got like a good ramp going. Like kids are making fun of him, and he like found out he was adopted, and like, but he doesn't really understand it. He has no friends at the lunch table. Then he gets like a little up boost, like, hey, I found a new friend, and he's cool, and we're hanging out. And then they're like, and then he gets tested. It's like he starts to figure out, oh, so it's like in his development arc, he's like, test one, he had a bad day, but he gets over it because he finds a friend. Then we elevate it slightly. So now he has a friend. So we test him and we say, okay, these kids are going to make fun of you. Well, he is who he is. So he shuts down. Monster freaks out, follows him home, tears up the room. Parents come down on him. Yet another like big burden, which is also a test. He blows up because he's learned something. It's his first moment of like change. Like shutting down didn't work before. It got me into this trouble.
Mm-hmm.
So he blows up. Then, yeah. So now it's like we almost have to we have to elevate it. So it's like either. So he's really upset at his parents because they blamed it on him.
So right now he's sitting in his room. Absolutely no one likes him. The kids at school have been picking on him. They haven't liked him since the beginning of the book.
Monster doesn't get
The
him.
monster has left him. His parents have come down. He's lonely as all get out right now.
Right.
So now the thing is, do you shut down or what's going to happen? I mean, and
well, theoretically,
to get somewhat morbid and to bring in some some headlines from news and stuff. I mean, this is a situation where that kid at the college who the girls never talked to,
right.
He flips out and does what he did. This is the situation where he was right before he armed himself.
Right. Yeah. It's, or on the flip side, it's where kids are before they hang themselves. It's like
right.
So I guess the question is like, do we? Because this is it's big enough that this could be like the climax where it's like he has to make a choice of who he's going to become, or it's like we could continue the story like another cycle in the like growing. So it's like he reacts in one way, and then the world reacts again, and then he's posed with his choice, his ultimate choice again. You know what I mean? That's kind of like the cycle of story. It's like, do we think this is big enough that like, I guess I'm not even sure how he would react in one of two ways.
He could, let me just say this because it's dumb as hell. He could be looking in the mirror. He opens up his chest plate and he's about to pull the battery out.
God. And there you go, folks. Every topic is on the table. We are in fact finding humor in suicide, but it's fucking funny. It actually is kind of funny in a different story.
Yeah, don't do
So
that.
he's about to
Life
pull it.
does get better. It really
Yeah,
does.
it does.
So yeah, I mean, but that's the what. So if there's people out there have ever heard of Malcolm Gladwell, he has a
Yeah,
book called The Tipping Point. This is where that tipping point is.
right. Yeah,
Um,
it's all the events that lead
do
up
we?
to.
I mean, we could go one step further where he
Well, I
jumps
feel
through the
like
window and runs away.
okay. So yeah, I feel like we can't call this the main climax, and the only reason I say that, I think it's big enough for him as a character, but I don't feel like we've explored the monster part, whether or not we view that as part of his personality or a separate character. I don't feel like we've had that cycle yet, and I feel like it could in fact get bigger. So basically
This might be
so
where we cut to the monster. Like the monster's now officially walking home.
right.
He also needs a tipping point.
So he's like all riled up,
Hmm.
and does he get in some trouble? Does he hurt someone? Does he um well, because what I was gonna say is, so the
Does he
robots,
go to Tai Chi class?
he goes to yoga and totally zens out, and all is well. I feel like
Hashtag namaste.
the end. Just namaste. Floating monster, yogi style. And we leave the poor little robot all alone, unfulfilled. Well, I feel like there's kind of only two ways that the robot could and or would react. He would either retreat to who he was, and he would just sulk in his room, shut down, and probably return to school the next day and like basically be back at square one. He wouldn't even really have the monster as a friend. He would be back in that lunchroom trying to figure out where he's going to sit. Clearly that doesn't really help our story move forward. I mean, maybe in a longer story it could, but or he acts upon his newfound knowledge and either he lashes out at his parents verbally, physically, or like in like you said, that he runs away. And I feel like maybe running away is the most effective because we get him out of the environment that created him and into, the unexplored world. Right now he's a kid without, his parents are mad at him. Like that used to be his safety net. He's making, because now he's basically making a choice to leave, metaphorically, leave everything that he knows, everything that he thought he was, to leap out that window and kind of go into the unknown. So I feel like for him, I think you're right. I think he needs to leap out the window and run away.
Or the parents come down on him, and maybe he's never had to deal with that before. So he's like, screw this. I'm going to the monster's house. And then and the symbolism there would be he's investigating fighting back. He's investigating
Testing the waters, yeah, rebellion,
yeah.
making his own stance and his own choice. I think that works. The only thing I question about it is like if my parents just came down my throat about something my friend did, would I really run to that friend's house?
Maybe you want to confront him.
Yeah, that's true. He should actually go and that's the point of the story. He needs to go confront his other side, his other friend, his extrovert. Yeah, no, you're right. That's exactly what he needs to do. So it's not so much that he's running away from his parents. I mean, he is by proxy, but that's not his goal, right? His goal is to more say, that's not cool, monster. Like, they just came down on me for this.
And
you
it's
did
all
it.
your fault.
And then the monster's like, no, you're the one who like went
He's
in
like,
a coma.
kick rocks, dude. My dad just put out a cigarette on me.
Right. Well, that's good, actually. No, because now that gives us the excuse as to why he goes to the monster's house. So he goes to the monster's house to tear him a new one, and then maybe gets
You
there
need to
and
go
changes
clean
his
my
mind.
room, or you need to do whatever.
Yeah. Okay. So he runs away to go to confront the monster. So we're at the monster's house. So when he gets there, what
And the
happens?
parents, obviously, the parents are going to be like, "You're not leaving this room until you clean it up and all this other stuff." La la la. He's like, "I'm not cleaning this up. That knucklehead's going to clean it up." So he climbs out of the window to go get his
Right.
monster to bring his ass back and clean up the room because the robot's not the one who busted
Right.
things up.
Right.
So then the monster's parents don't know that they had a falling out because they don't care.
He should be. They should be like, "You got to clean up this room," and he'd be like, "I ain't no Roomba." uh, we gotta.
What
We
do I
gotta
look
slip.
like? What do I look like? A shag carpet? Pwah, pwah.
Oh, there they are. Okay, so no. I think we're getting close. We're almost there. It's making perfect sense. So he goes to confront the monster. He comes to the house. What happens? Like, he's expecting. I mean, it's kind of the classic thing. You figure out what he's expecting, and then you reverse it on him. You throw it in his face. So he's expecting to go there to yell at the monster, and the monster's like, "Yeah, dude, you're right. I'll come help you clean up," and they make up and they're friends. But that's probably not what happens.
No, check this out. He goes and right before he knocks on the door or whatever, he looks in the window and he sees the monster getting abused. I don't know. What's a good word.
Oh, yelled
Mistreated.
at or like whatever a
Yeah.
monster would do.
Yeah. Not necessarily like belts and flip flops, but he's getting, maybe he's eating a cold dinner, because the monster needs to have, he needs to pay the price too, because he's been gone from home. He didn't come straight home from school, right? So he followed the robot home. So now he's also in trouble. The monster is also in trouble. So the monster parents are coming down on him, but they come down in an aggressive, monstrous fashion. And then the robot sees this happening. And then
Throwing pans and pots and
yeah, whatever it is. Like,
I don't know.
yeah,
I think obviously I don't think I want to show a monster beating his kid, but I think we could go so far as to have him throwing objects around the room,
or
it's kind
even the monster might be in his room / closet. And the robot is like, dude, you need to come clean my room. And the monster's like, don't think so. And then you can hear this whole thing happening in the other room, where maybe the parents are yelling at each other because their kid is unruly and he didn't come home from school, and the house is dirty, whatever it is that's happening. The robot needs to see that
right.
that way of life.
His home life is like chaos and like the house is a mess and his parents don't agree with each other. They don't even talk. Because you might be right. I think since we had the robot parents as like helicopter parents, as like take it easy, everything will work out, like kind of calm and like controlled and everything's planned, suddenly freak out and like yell at him. I think it's important to show that although the monster parents are angry and aggressive, it's like absent, right? It's like this happens across the house and I'm left here. You know what I mean? I think it's
And
kind
it
of
shows, and it shows you that Yes, Mr. Robot, your life might be tough, but it's nothing in comparison to what other people might be going through.
Right. Right. Like you had this little freak out about your room and your parents, but like, come on, kid, get real.
Yeah, this monster is living in a closet or under the bed, and his parents are teeing off on each other in the other room.
So then what happens between the two of them? Like, does the monster?
The monster is now officially shutting down because his parents are in the other room going crazy. This is the point where they start to switch because the robot is upset his room is a mess.
Right.
The
So
monster
he
is
right.
shutting down because
So he crawls under his bed or in the closet, and the robot's like, "Why are you doing this? Like, you're so strong. Like, why do you let them walk all over you? Why do they scream? Why are you running away when 5 seconds ago you were just trying to help?" That's when he realizes he was trying to help. Right? You were trying to help me and get me to stand up for myself.
mm-hmm.
And the monster's like, this is what I do. I don't deal with them because they're lunatics.
Right.
So then does the robot mirror the behavior and like like not lash out, but be extroverted towards the monster parents? Is that too much? Is that like
Yeah,
how?
that's too much because a robot's not going to do anything to monster parents unless he cuts them with lasers. You know.
Like, let me show you how to handle your parents. Dude, you killed my parents.
or like his hands turn into like buzz saws, and then he's just like he just chops
And then the
everyone up.
monster has dead parents and they're never friends again. Dude, that's not what I meant by helping me.
And then child services comes and takes the monster away, and
God.
and then there's the song, "It's a hard knock life for us."
And then the sad Sarah McLachlan. The Sarah McLachlan music over the abused monster, the abused sad monster in the rain.
Yeah.
That's one ending. Or so okay, so fine. So the robot's like, why are you shutting down? You're like crawling under the bed, and like you were so strong, and you were like standing up, like
Because the
Dr.
robot is still being a jerk right now, right?
Yeah, kind of.
He's like, I don't even care, dude. Like, and the
Like, you
ro
got me in
and the
trouble.
monster's like, leave me alone, dude. You don't even understand.
Like your messy room is the last thing I got to be worried about.
Right. I can't
So
leave. My parents are upset.
so then what? Kind of how do we? I don't know how to move on from there. It's kind of like, so does the robot? Does the robot leave because he's furious? He's like, you're
Or what
not
if
gonna.
the monster parents bust in the room and see the robot in there and they beat the hell out of the robot?
Oh, God. Oh, ouch. That's one option. I mean, thematically, it actually works, but I don't really know. I'm gonna have to have my corporate filter buzz and be like,
Yeah, about that.
Well, they could break in and they're like, "Who's this kid over? You're punished. Like, why are you having guests over?" And then maybe, oh yeah, hey. So then maybe is that when the robot stands up, quote unquote, to the parents and is like, don't come down on him. Like, he was trying to help me. That's why he was late from school. And like, we got into a fight at school and he was protecting me or something like that. Maybe. No.
No, yeah. I mean, I can see that because they need to all of this has been building up to the monster and the robot both need to learn how to be each other.
Right. So yeah, we effectively need the robot to stand up for his friend like the robot did and be extroverted and aggressive, and we need, but it's weird because it doesn't seem like the monster is being an introvert for the robot's benefit, or I mean he's just shutting down because he doesn't want to deal with his parents, which maybe that's okay. I mean, I guess
Well, the robot always shut down, not really caring what the monster was doing either.
that's true. It's that's true. You're right. It was to protect himself basically and not the
Yeah.
monster.
Selfish prick.
Yeah, actually, so like the parents could barge in and be like, who's this? Like you, why is there somebody over? Like you don't even have any friends. And then it could kind of be like the robot stands up for him. It's like he's late from school because he was walking me home. Like we got in a fight at school and he stood up for me. And then it's kind of like they're showing off their friendship, and maybe that also kind of like softens the parents a little bit. I don't know.
This is what's going on in my head, and I need to get the idea out of my head. The dad is like, rah! And he swings at the robot, and it just goes ting. It doesn't do anything. Rah! He swings and he hits him in the jaw, but it doesn't do anything. It just goes ting. No, that's horrible. Let's see. Because there needs to be one big final confrontation.
Yeah, it's like we can't. Yeah.
Or how about this? How about the robot goes to the monster's house, sees the parents yelling and screaming and all of that, but the monster's not there anymore. The monster was there. The parents, mistreated him in whatever way, but then he's out, say, at you know what, when they're playing and stuff like that, maybe they have a fortress, or they have a playhouse, or they have a tree house or something that's kind of like their safe zone away from home, right? And
Yeah,
so
I could see that. Yeah.
the robot goes to the house, goes to the monster's house. There's a bunch of yelling and screaming, and that kid is useless and da 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 da, right? But then there's no kid. And then the robot then goes to their fortress, and the robot and the monsters there. Well, now you have the robot's parents that are looking for the robot, and then you have the monster's parents that are looking for the monster, and then everyone converges. They find themselves at the fortress, right? And that's where everyone gets confronted by everyone.
That's really good, actually. I'd never even thought about getting the two parents together. Okay, so look for that. Okay, so the parents look for them, and the two are in the clubhouse. So basically, the robot goes off on the monster. Like, what? Why did you destroy my room? You got to go clean it up. The monster's like, chill out, bro. Like,
the monster is like,
I got more
doesn't
things
want
to
to hear
worry
about it. Yeah, monster does not want to hear about it at all.
He's gonna like, I got bigger things to worry about. So then the parents show up, and okay, so yeah, now we got to have.
Now you have the mixed emotions. Are you pissed off because your kids are gone? Or are you relieved that you finally found your kids? Mind you, everyone's been upset. Everyone's been going off on each other. Everyone's been on the monster side of that line, right? And so everyone gets to the clubhouse, and everyone is on the monster side. So the escalation is there. And everyone is about to tell everyone else to go kick rocks and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And then eventually someone says, I'm just glad you're okay. And it might be
Yeah.
oversimplifying it, but
No, I mean, I feel like we're missing a step, like emotionally or verbally. Like it feels like that would be, I mean, obviously that's what everyone is thinking, and that's why everybody's all riled up. But it's like, I think we're missing a step in terms of like, because I feel like we aren't resolving. That works for the parents, and it even actually works for the robot, because it's like the robot was freaking out, but he pulls back and it's like, I was just worried about you, and I'm hoping you're okay. So in a way, he's like learning to pull back his aggression, but like I think we're missing a step, because it's like,
or how about
the monster didn't.
This is the thought that I don't know, may or may not make sense, because the confrontation between the robot and the monster has to escalate.
Yeah.
Because we need to figure out, do we want to go on this side or that side of the monster line? Right. So right now, everyone is on that side. Everyone is heated. And maybe they
Except the monster.
The robot, the monster wants to be left alone, and the robot keeps poking and poking and poking and poking. The thing would be, does the monster get up and finally say, stop it, and push the robot to where the robot starts to fall out of the clubhouse? Or is it that the robot, or not the robot, but the monster, like someone needs to be in danger for the reality of the situation to finally subside?
Well, I really like the visual representation of the emotions you talked about earlier, about like where the monster gets bigger. Like I feel like this is a time for it. Like, and it's also a physical and a visual way of describing how far to push extroversion, because it's like the robot's learned to be an extrovert now, and so he's just like full on like annoying and like going at it. So it's like maybe that's like a negative side of it. So it's like he's poking at him, and the monster gets bigger and like explodes, and like that's the culmination of both the worst sides of being an extreme extrovert, right? It's like the robot was so annoying and so forward and aggressive that he caused violence, right? Those are like the two, I guess, negative sides of being an extrovert. So that works really well for that, like learning the balance. So then I guess if the monster attacks him or pushes him off the ledge, even accidentally or however it happens, so then if we could have the robot fall and get hurt or break apart. I mean, he is a robot. It's not like he can be pieced back together or something. Like I guess,
or they go straight Matrix, where like when they loaded the kung fu program, and Morpheus kept telling Neo, stop trying to hit me and just hit me. And this whole thing, you know what I mean? There's like this kung fu session, and and it could be, I mean, not necessarily that it needs to be a kung fu session, but it could be that they fight. And it's going to be a literal representation of the struggle between that monster line, right?
Right.
And I'm trying to figure out, would it be too cheesy where the robot is now the one that gets bigger?
Well, maybe, unless we can think of like a proper visual way that would happen. Like, I don't know if his parts are sort of, I mean, we'll talk about this in character design, but if we think that's an important thematic thing, like things get bigger as they're becoming more extroverted, like maybe his parts gears open and he expands. If that's like, I don't, it seems silly if he just gets bigger for the sake of getting bigger, but
Yeah.
if it's sort of like an animal, like a bird that kind of fluffs up when it's like, if it's maybe something like that. Yeah. So I think you're right. I think this is like the testing how far extroversion and aggression can go. So they're fighting. I think they both should get hurt, actually. I think they should both come out of it, you know, one with a black eye and one with a dismembered robot arm or something, you know, and it's like there's the aftermath. The parents see it and they're like, these two kids just destroyed each other over what? You know, it's kind of like, I think that's kind of, you almost don't even need to say anything after that. It's kind of like these kids just fought over something that started so small when in reality, Monster was trying to help Robot. Robot was trying to get an apology for getting blamed. You know, it's like a lot of misunderstandings and a lot of overreactions and just a total lack of communication. It's like this is at the point where kind of bringing it down a notch, and we actually, here you go. You use the good part of extroversion and you all talk. You all have an open, like, I'm mad at you for this. Oh man, I'm sorry. I didn't even realize that. And I wish that you would have done this, or, you know, like, I think they both need to get hurt because I feel like showing them both injured, like after the big chaos of, you know, fighting, they're both sitting there kind of sad and pathetic. Like, really, you guys just fought over that? It's more of a question of like how to resolve, especially if you're going to bring the parents in. I mean, they could like run up and approach, and it's like, what happened to you guys? Because you want to, ideally, you want to have the robot parents kind of realize that hovering and coming down on him the way they did was not good. So, like, we need a way for them to recognize that. And then you also need the monster parents to be like, we didn't even know you had a friend, you know? It's like, we're so busy being angry. Right. Well, it's not that he never talks to them. Maybe it's they're just terrible parents and they never bothered to ask, or they're too busy fighting. Yeah. It's like, we were so busy fighting, we didn't even know you had a friend. And then the other parents are like, we were too busy helicoptering you. We, like, how do you word that one, or how do you wrap that one up in a little bow? It makes sense for me for the monsters, because that seems like a nice little, like, wow, our baby has a friend. We didn't even know you had a friend because we're terrible parents. You know what I mean? Right. It's like that realization moment for them. But like, how we need to get a realization moment for the robot parents. Like, we didn't even know you had all this in you because we do everything for you. Kind of. Yeah. I mean, we need a better way, a more poetic way to show that or say that, but that's effectively what we want them to say. We didn't even know that you could be so powerful. We didn't even know that you could stand up for yourself because we never let you, basically.
Yeah. Like, wow, you can defend yourself.
Or, you know, they can bring up the whole room situation, right? Like, we just assumed it was you did it to your room because we don't.
But then are we stepping away from the fact that the monster was a imaginary friend?
Well, that was that question I brought up earlier. Like, if we want to hit that on the nose and like, because that's the other question. Like, if we do that and effectively, like, the robot parents can't acknowledge the monster, it's more like, because you can still have the thing with the monster parents. I mean, they can effectively be like another figment of the character, right? It's like a lesson to be learned about that aspect of his personality. But the robot parents, if you don't want them to really acknowledge the monster, or he's still like more of a metaphorical character, then it's more like they have to they still have to acknowledge like the whole room situation, right? Like, why did you tear up your room? And but what does the kid say? The robot, it's like he could still say it wasn't me, which is the truth. But if we're pretending it's sort of like a personality or a imagination thing rather than a person, he wouldn't say that. He'd have to like take blame for it. But maybe that's part of accepting his friend and like taking one for the team. Like, you got a lot more to worry about. Like, the least I can do is say, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have shut down, and like, yeah, I did it, I'll clean out my room. Or, I mean, maybe he doesn't have to acknowledge it. He doesn't have to actually acknowledge the monster. He just says, don't worry about it, I'll clean up the room. Like, it's endings are tough.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean we have to come up with one right now. We're at about 2 hours. And I think honestly, I feel like we have really solid outline.
Yeah.
With the exception of how to put a bow on it. And I think some of that may just kind of flesh on the second session or as we're working on our stuff.
Yeah.
So I think this would be a good time for us to go into homework.
Homework.
So we'll be posting on the blog kind of the outline we came up with that you can follow along with, as well as inspirational links that we referenced and kind of stuff, so you can sort of follow our thought process if you're so inclined to dig that deep. But now is the fun part where you get to watch the other creative process. So do we want to do some kind of style looks, like because we haven't thought of like character names, we haven't thought of a name for the story, we didn't even really discuss traits about these characters, physical traits other than, you know, their personality. And we said maybe monster's fuzzy and maybe robot can expand, but that's kind of as far as we went. So do we want to do some character designs and maybe some like environment treatments, like kind of how we visualize the look and feel of this book? Like, what kind of visual style might kind of help sell this story? Like, do we want to maybe develop two contrasting visual style? Like, in a way, we could utilize the fact that your style is different from mine and kind of merge the two, because it's kind of reflective of the story of two styles merging. Maybe we should. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, let's work on just a bunch of drawings.
Yeah. I think we're still in the brainstorming phase, so we should brainstorm some character thoughts, some maybe like if you props of importance, some environments, or whatever we think might be helpful.
Yeah.
To start fleshing it out.
Because if you look at a lot of these art of books, like especially the one that pops into my head is the Monsters Inc. one, probably because we've been talking about monsters all night, but like Sully and Makowski, what's his name?
Yeah, it's something like that.
Whatever. Wachowski.
Mike Malkowski.
Yeah, and let's just Mike.
Mike.
Sully and Mike, they have so many different looks, and
Yeah.
so I
Yeah, because
think
a lot of that.
coming up with a bunch
Yeah,
of scribbles will be fun. Um,
and I still think we're still in the brainstorming phase, even of the story. So I think brainstorming some visuals might help feed that story or give us some insight into where certain things need to go, and just kind of give a fuller feel. So I think for now we should leave it kind of unstructured without an actual rules to our homework. Obviously, later down the line, we'll actually set requirements and what we're trying to achieve. Like we got to finish one page, and we got to do a color, and we got to do an ink, or whatever it is. But for now, I think we're still in the loose phase. So let's do a whole bunch of drawings, whatever you feel like, maybe whatever just comes out of your head, and we'll both be posting those, and maybe some of our thought processes. Maybe there'll be a video of one of each of us, or maybe there'll be an article about what we thought we came up with, and then we'll reconvene.
Cool. I like it.
All right. Well, thanks so much for listening. I'm pretty excited about this project. I hope it's insightful for folks. I know if nothing else, it's insightful for me.
I know this is the farthest we've ever gotten.
Yeah, I mean it's a pretty solid. I'm actually it's pretty cool.
I'm excited about it.
There's like a lot of little cool bits in there, and there's some really could be some like poignant things that kind of stick with you. Like there's some aspects of this that kind of remind me of childhood books that I remember reading, or movies that really stuck with me.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's do some work, and we will recap next time. Be sure to follow the blog, and our bumpers will tell you all that, and the links will be provided. Thanks so much for following along. This was episode 1, Brainstorming. On the Process Projects.